Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We are going to be exploring something pretty amazing, the power of imagination. But not just any old imagination, we're talking Carl Jung's view of imagination.
Yes.
And get this, we're going deep on just a single excerpt for this whole deep dive. It's from Texto Pegado. But there is so much packed in there, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people, when they think of imagination, they think of, just daydreaming.
Right, just kind of zoning out.
Yeah, just escapism. But for Jung, it was way more than that. He thought of imagination as this, fundamental force, the very foundation of how we experience the world and how we create our reality.
It's interesting because this text we are looking at, it actually says, and I'm quoting here, every aspect of our world begins in the realm of imagination. Wow, that's a pretty big statement, right?
It is. It really is. I mean, it challenges us to think differently, doesn't it?
It does.
Because we often feel like we're just reacting to the world that is sort of happening to us.
Right.
But what Jung is suggesting is that our inner world, our imagination, that's the real starting point.
Correct.
It's like we're all, kind of constantly writing and rewriting the script of our lives. And it's all based on the images and the stories that we hold in our minds.
So you're saying it's not just passive daydreaming, but it's active creation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And this is where Jung's idea of the collective unconscious comes in. You've probably heard of that.
Yeah.
And it's this, for some people, it sounds a little out there, but really what he's talking about is this idea that we're all connected to this deeper layer of shared symbols, archetypes.
So less about mystical woo-woo and more about patterns that really affect us all.
I think that's a really good way to put it. And an example of this is, think about the hero's journey. It's, we see it everywhere, right? From ancient myths to, modern movies,
Yeah.
Star Wars, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like every story.
And it's not just a coincidence. Jung would say that it reflects something deeply, deeply true about the human experience.
Wow. So you're saying these patterns are showing up in our own lives, not just in stories.
Absolutely, yeah. And the more we become aware of those patterns, those archetypes working behind the scenes in our lives, the more we can actually understand ourselves and the choices that we make.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me, is when Jung talks about this idea of active imagination.
Yes.
So what is that exactly? Because it sounds kind of vague.
Yeah, it does. But really what it is it's about engaging with your imagination, but in a purposeful way. So instead of just dismissing your dreams or your daydreams, it's about, learning to have a conversation with them, to explore the hidden meanings.
It's almost like you're treating your imagination like a wise friend or something.
Yeah, I love that.
That you can actually get advice from.
That's a great way to put it, yeah, because, what you're doing is you're tapping into the wisdom of your unconscious mind. And for Jung, this was the way to bridge the gap between our conscious thoughts and those deeper forces that drive us.
There is a part here that I find really fascinating, and that's where he talks about resisting our unconscious actually makes it stronger.
Yeah, that's powerful.
So what's that all about?
I think a good analogy for that is trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Oh, yeah.
The harder you push it down, the more forcefully it's gonna, pop up.
And probably in a place that you don't want it to pop up.
Right, in a place that you don't expect.
Totally.
So it's about becoming the master of your inner world instead of being controlled by it.
Okay.
And what's really fascinating is that this isn't just some kind of abstract idea. There's actual science to back this up.
Oh. Are we going into brain stuff now?
We are going into a little brain stuff.
I love brain stuff.
So think about athletes. Athletes, they use visualization all the time to improve their performance.
Mm-hmm.
And studies have shown that just by vividly imagining themselves succeeding, whatever their sport is, they can achieve almost the same level of improvement as those who are physically training.
Wait, seriously? Just by thinking about it?
By thinking about it, yeah.
That's wild.
And the reason for that, the reason why it works, is because your brain doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's vividly imagined. So the same neural pathways are activated in both cases.
Oh, so it's you're actually training your brain for success just by using your imagination.
You are. You're literally training your brain.
Wow.
But, and here's the catch, there is a catch. A lot of people use their imagination against themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And how they do that is they focus on negative scenarios.
Oh, I do that all the time.
Always imagining the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I'm a master at that.
Yeah, and Jung called this inflating the shadow. Right. And basically what it means is that your unconscious mind, it doesn't judge. Like whatever you feed it, that's what it brings to life, whether it's positive or negative.
Oh, so if we are feeding it all this like negativity and fear all the time,
Yeah.
we're actually, in a way, making that more likely to happen.
It's not that straightforward.
Okay.
But it's like planting seeds, right?
Right.
If you plant seeds of doubt and fear, guess what's going to grow?
Yeah, doubt and fear.
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to learn how to, plant the right seeds.
Exactly.
So how do we use our imagination then for like healing and for growth?
Yeah. Yes.
Instead of just like feeding those anxieties.
Well, Jung believed that the key is to integrate the parts of ourselves that we've rejected or that we've pushed away, especially the ones that we've labeled as negative. And he called this process individuation.
Individuation. Well,
I know, it's a big word.
it's a big word. And it kind of sounds a little intimidating. So what does that mean, like practically speaking?
Practically speaking, it's about becoming whole. It's about embracing all aspects of ourselves, even what Jung called the shadow self.
Ooh, the shadow self. Okay,
Yeah.
we got to explain that one.
Yeah.
Because that sounds kind of dark and mysterious.
It does. And it is a little bit. Imagine the shadow self as those parts of you that you've learned to hide, the parts that society might not approve of. It could be your anger, it could be your ambition, it could be your deepest desires.
So it's like the hidden, maybe the darker side of our personality.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But here's the thing, right? Trying to ignore it or repress your shadow, it doesn't make it go away.
Right.
In fact, it often makes it stronger, right? And it can manifest in, unhealthy ways, like blaming others for our own, internal conflict.
Oh, so like projecting our own stuff outward.
Projecting, exactly.
So these shadow parts, you're saying they're not inherently bad. It's just that we need to learn how to, I don't know, deal with them.
Yeah, they're just parts of us. They're just parts of us that need to be acknowledged and integrated.
Okay.
And Jung believed that by embracing our shadow, by bringing it into the light of consciousness, that we can actually become more authentic and more powerful.
That's a really interesting idea. Like instead of pretending that those parts don't exist, we actually kind of, I guess, accept them as part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
But how does imagination help us do that? Because that seems like a big leap to make.
Well, imagination provides a safe space to explore those hidden aspects, right?
Okay.
It could be through dreams. It could be through what we talked about before, active imagination exercises. It could even be through creative expression, like writing or art.
Got it.
And by engaging with those shadow parts in our imagination, we can start to understand their motivations. We can find healthy ways to integrate their energy.
So it's not about getting rid of the shadow, but learning to, I don't know, work with it. Maybe even like befriend it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a great way to put it. It's about turning what we fear into a source of strength and creativity.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, this has all been super fascinating, but I have to ask, like, where does the idea of meaning fit into all of this? Because Jung, he seemed to believe that modern society was suffering from this lack of meaning.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Well, what Jung observed was that a lot of people, even people who were outwardly successful, they had achieved a lot, they had material wealth, they felt this deep sense of emptiness.
Yeah.
And he believed that this was because we've kind of lost touch with a deeper sense of meaning, the kind of meaning that, in the past used to be provided by myths, by rituals, by a connection to something bigger than ourselves.
They're so focused on like achieving and accumulating that we've kind of forgotten about like our inner world and our sense of purpose.
That's a really good way to put it, yeah. I mean, we're constantly bombarded with messages, right, about what we should want, what success looks like. But those messages, they often come from external sources, They're not coming from our own inner knowing.
Okay, so how do we reclaim that sense of meaning?
Right.
Like, do we have to go back to like old traditions or something?
I don't think so. Jung believed that the source of meaning lies within each of us.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with our own unique potential, our own inner wisdom.
So it's almost like creating meaning from within.
Exactly. And this is where imagination comes in.
Okay.
It plays a vital role because the stories that we tell ourselves, the narratives that we create about who we are and what our lives mean, those shape our reality.
Wow.
So if we want to change our lives, we need to change the story.
It's so interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
So it's about becoming aware of the stories that we're already telling ourselves and choosing to tell a different one,
Yes, a more empowering
a
one.
more empowering one.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we have the power to rewrite the script, to create a narrative that is aligned with our values and our aspirations.
This is pretty powerful stuff. So we're not just talking about like personal growth here.
Hmm.
We're talking about using imagination to create a life of meaning.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's where things get even more interesting because our individual imagination, it's actually connected to something much larger.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
It's connected to what we call the collective imagination.
Collective imagination.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds almost mystical.
It does, it does. But what it means is that we're all connected, not just physically, but through a shared space of imagination.
Okay.
And just like our individual imaginations can shape our personal realities, the collective imagination shapes the reality that we experience as a society.
Whoa. So you're saying like cultural trends and even like historical events, they're influenced by this collective imagination.
Right. Think about the stories that we tell ourselves as a society. The stories about who we are, what we value, what's possible, those shape our collective reality for better or for worse.
Okay, now I'm starting to see where you're going with this.
Hmm.
So if we want to change the world, we need to change the story. But how do we even begin to do that?
That's a big question.
We left off talking about how all of our individual imaginations are somehow connected to this like collective imagination that shapes society.
It's a big idea.
It is a big idea.
It is.
So how do we actually tap into that
Right.
and use it for good?
Well, one powerful way is through the stories that we tell.
Okay.
And I'm not just talking about, fairy tales or, fictional stories. I'm talking about the narratives that we share, through art, through music, through books, even through the news, right?
Right.
All of these contribute to shaping our collective understanding of the world.
So if we want to create a more positive future,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be telling stories that reflect those values and those possibilities.
Yeah, I think it's about using our imagination to inspire hope, not just to escape reality. And it starts with each of us, taking responsibility for our own inner world, the thoughts, the beliefs, the images that we choose to cultivate.
Because those choices actually ripple outwards and affect the collective.
Exactly, yeah. Jung believed that individual transformation is a prerequisite for collective transformation. So the more we work on healing our own personal shadows, the more we contribute to healing the collective shadow.
Our collective shadow.
Right. The shared fears, the prejudices, those kind of destructive patterns that we see playing out in the world.
So we can't just focus on like fixing the outside world. We have to start with ourselves.
It's both.
Okay.
It's both. They're interconnected, but it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of things.
Right.
Like, what difference can one person's imagination really make?
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way.
But, think about it this way. Every social movement, every invention, every leap forward in human consciousness, it started with a single thought, a spark of imagination in someone's mind.
So you're saying even though the world's problems seem huge, our individual imaginations still matter.
They do. They really do. And the power of the collective imagination, it's amplified when we come together with a shared vision. It's like each individual spark adds to the fire.
That's a great metaphor.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin? How do we like practically use our imagination to heal ourselves and contribute to something bigger?
Well, we talked about active imagination as a way to kind of understand our unconscious mind, right?
Right.
And this is a powerful tool for personal growth. And you can start practicing it right away.
Okay, reminder for our listeners. How do we actually do active imagination? Because it still sounds kind of mysterious.
Yeah, it does.
Like, what are the steps?
Yeah, think of it as having a conversation with your imagination. It could start with a dream or a recurring image that keeps popping into your mind,
Okay.
Or maybe just a strong feeling that you can't shake. Whatever it is.
So let's say I keep having this like really vivid dream about being lost in a forest.
Okay.
Like, where do I go from there?
Okay, so first, find a quiet space where you can relax and focus.
Okay.
Close your eyes and try to bring that dream image to mind,
Okay.
as vividly as you can.
Okay.
And then simply start talking to
Wait,
it.
I'm talking like out loud to a dream image?
You can talk out loud, you can write in a journal, you can draw, whatever helps you connect.
Okay. That makes it a little less strange.
Yeah. The important thing is to be open to a dialogue. So ask the image questions. What are you trying to tell me? What do you represent? How do you make me feel?
Okay. What if my imagination just goes blank?
Yeah.
Or what if I don't hear any answers? What if it just feels like nothing's happening?
It takes practice. It's like learning any new skill. And sometimes it might feel like nothing's happening, but trust that your unconscious mind is always working.
Be patient, keep showing up, and eventually you'll start to notice patterns, insights emerging.
Got it. So it's about building a relationship with our unconscious mind.
Yes, and remember, it often speaks in the language of symbols and metaphors, so be open to that.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what does this particular image or feeling mean to me?
Right.
What personal significance does it hold?
Yeah, and I'm sure some of our listeners are thinking, okay, this all sounds really interesting, but I'm busy. I don't have time for dream analysis.
Yeah, I hear you. But even just 5 minutes of mindful reflection each day can make a difference.
Okay.
Whether it's journaling, taking a walk in nature, paying attention to your breath,
Right.
These small moments, they create space for your imagination to speak.
So it's about being more intentional with our time and attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised at the ripple effects. As you cultivate this connection with your inner world, you might start noticing meaningful coincidences, a sense of flow in your life.
Jung called these synchronicities, and they're often a sign that you're on the right track.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to using imagination for healing for a second.
Okay.
Because, before we were talking about how we sometimes use our imaginations against ourselves,
Yeah.
like focusing on fears and negative thoughts and all that.
Right.
So how do we flip that script?
Well, one powerful technique is visualization. But instead of visualizing what you don't want, focus on what you do want.
Okay.
Create a detailed mental picture of yourself,
Okay.
healthy, successful, living in alignment with your values. Engage all of your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel in this imagined reality?
So it's about intentionally shifting our focus from fear to possibility.
Yes, and your brain, it doesn't know the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. So by repeatedly visualizing a positive outcome, you're actually training your mind and body to move towards it.
Okay, so is this similar to like the law of attraction stuff? Like just thinking positive thoughts to manifest good things?
There are similarities, but I think Jung's approach goes a bit deeper.
Okay.
It's not just about wishful thinking. It's
Right.
about understanding the power of the unconscious mind and aligning your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions with your deepest desires.
So it's more about becoming like a conscious creator,
Yeah.
not just passively hoping that things are going to change.
Yeah. And it's not about denying the challenges that we face.
Right.
It's about approaching them with a sense of agency, believing in our ability to overcome them.
Got it. So we're not trying to create like a perfect problem-free life. It's more about like building inner strength and resilience.
Exactly, yeah. And that brings us back to this idea of individuation,
Bring
right?
it back to individuate.
Embracing all parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
even our shadow side.
Okay, back to the shadow. How can we use our imaginations to work with those like darker, more challenging aspects of ourselves?
Yeah.
Because it still feels a little intimidating to me.
Yeah, it can be, but think of it this way. Imagination provides a safe container to explore those shadow qualities without judgment.
Okay.
So let's say, you struggle with anger.
Right.
You could imagine yourself having a conversation with that anger.
Really?
Yeah, and ask it, what are you trying to tell me? What do you need? What are you afraid of?
So we're treating those challenging emotions with curiosity,
Yeah.
not just trying to like shove them down and pretend they don't exist.
Exactly. Because by understanding our shadow, we take away its power.
Okay.
And we can actually integrate those qualities in healthy ways,
Yeah.
use them as fuel for growth and creativity instead of letting them control us.
So it's not about getting rid of the shadow, but learning to work with it.
Yeah.
Maybe even befriend it.
Befriend it. I like that.
And that process of, integration can be incredibly liberating.
It can be. It allows us to live with more authenticity and a sense of wholeness.
This whole conversation has been really eye-opening. It feels like working with our imagination isn't just about like achieving goals. It's about a much deeper process of like self-discovery.
It is. It's about connecting with our true potential and our place in the larger web of life.
Which brings us back to this idea of meaning making.
Right.
How does, our individual journey of self-discovery connect to that larger sense of purpose that Jung talked about?
This is where things get truly exciting. Because as we delve deeper into our own inner world, we start to tap into something bigger than ourselves, something that transcends our individual ego.
It's like we're all connected on a deeper level.
Yes. And Jung believed that this is where true meaning resides. It's about realizing that we're not just isolated individuals, but interconnected beings who are part of this collective unconscious.
Wow.
A shared human experience that stretches back through time and across cultures.
That's a powerful image. So how does recognizing this interconnectedness, how does that help us create a more meaningful life?
Okay, so we've been talking about how our, individual imagination connects to this larger idea of a collective imagination, right? And how that shapes kind of the world around us.
Right.
It's a pretty amazing concept when you think about it.
Yeah. It's like we're all contributing to this giant tapestry
Okay.
of stories and dreams and ideas. And that tapestry, in turn, shapes our collective reality.
But if we are all kind of creating this collective reality together,
Right.
doesn't that mean we also have the power to change it?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's where things get really exciting.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Right.
Like, where do we even begin?
Well, remember how we talked about visualization
Yeah.
and the power of focusing on what we want to create?
Right.
It's the same principle, but on a larger scale.
Okay.
So instead of just visualizing our personal goals, we can start to visualize a world that reflects our values, a world that we want to live in.
Exactly.
So it's not about escaping into fantasy.
Right.
It's about using our imagination to envision a better future,
Yes. Yeah.
a more just world, a
Yeah.
healthier planet, all of that.
Absolutely. It's about using the power of imagination to inspire hope, to empower ourselves and others to take action. But it's important to remember, this isn't about imposing our vision on others.
Right. It's not about saying my idea of a perfect world is the only right one.
Exactly. Yeah. It's more about contributing our own unique perspective,
Okay.
our piece of the puzzle,
Right.
and recognizing that we're all co-creators
Yeah.
of this collective reality.
Got it.
And just like in any creative process, there's going to be collaboration, dialogue, and a willingness to let go of our own ego's need to control the outcome.
So it's not just about dreaming big. It's also about working together, sharing our ideas, and finding some kind of common ground.
Yeah, I think about social movements
Yeah.
throughout history. They often start with a shared vision, a collective yearning for a better world.
Okay.
And that shared vision, that collective imagination, is what fuels the movement.
Right.
It's what inspires people to take action, to overcome obstacles, to create lasting change.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I can't help but still feel a bit overwhelmed by it all, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because the world's problems, they just seem so huge.
Oh,
you know?
I do, yeah.
So what can one person's imagination really do?
Don't underestimate the power of a single spark.
Okay.
Every great movement, every revolution, it started with a single thought, a single act of courage. Think about Rosa Parks, refusing to give up her seat on the bus.
Right.
Think about Martin Luther King Jr.'s, I have a dream speech.
Yeah.
These were acts of imagination,
Yeah.
acts of defiance against the status quo.
So you're saying that even small acts of imagination, small acts of courage can have this kind of ripple effect.
Absolutely. And that's where the power of community comes in, when we connect with like-minded people. Right.
When we support each other's growth,
Yeah.
we amplify those ripples. We create a wave of change.
So it's not about trying to change the world all by ourselves. It's more about finding our people, our community, and kind of working together.
Exactly, yeah. And it's about being patient. Change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. And there will be setbacks along the way.
So we need to be resilient,
Yes.
persistent, keep imagining, keep creating, even when it feels like nothing's changing.
Exactly. Because even when we don't see immediate results, we're still contributing to a shift in consciousness.
Okay.
We're planting seeds that will eventually blossom into something beautiful.
I love that. So it all starts with a single thought,
Yeah,
a single act of imagination.
it does.
Wow, this whole deep dive has been incredible.
It's been fun.
It really has. It's really shifted my perspective on, what imagination is, what it can do, both in our personal lives and for the world at large.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, what is the one message that you would like to leave our listeners with? What's the call to action?
Imagine. Just imagine a world that reflects your highest values.
Okay.
Imagine a world filled with beauty and justice and compassion.
Yeah.
And then take action, however small, to bring that vision into reality.
I love that. What a powerful call to action. So remember, everyone, you're not just a passive observer in this world. You're a co-creator. Your imagination is a force. It's a tool. It's a gift. Use it wisely. Use it boldly. Use it to create a world that reflects your most beautiful dreams.
Because, as Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances.
Yeah.
If there is any reaction, both are transformed.
What a great thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the power of imagination.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring.